Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Darla Price. For those that don't know, I'm the Executive Director at the Northumberland Manufacturers Association, and we are very proud to host our partner Baker Tilly today. I've had the privilege of working with multiple representatives and divisions within Baker Tilly, whether it's our awesome local guy here in Coburg or executives across the province. They always seem to bring the right people to the table. And I think that is what makes them so great. Um, Not only are they here helping industry thrive and innovate, find money, succession plan with their people, to so many different areas and services, to even helping support the expansion of your business. So, really proud to have everybody here today. Thank you so much, Baker Tilly, for bringing the team in. I really look forward to the session. And that's it. I would now like to pass it over to our amazing representative at Baker Tilly, Sean Grant Young. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Darla. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to the seminar this morning, the webinar. I'm really proud to host our colleagues from Brazil and Mexico here. I've had the pleasure of working with and meeting with and discussing the future with these teams, and they really have shown the strength and the depth and the maturity of their businesses within these very important jurisdictions in a time like this. I believe we're going to start with a presentation from our team in Brazil, talking about doing business in Brazil, the highlights and the overview of what the Brazilian economy is like. So I'll pass it over to Andre, who is the managing partner in Brazil, and Renato, who's their international business leader.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I will try to give you a fast overview of Brazil, talking just a little about the country, the economic, the political outlook, and the key industries in Brazil. Brazil is a country of continental dimensions. It covers an area of 80.5 million square kilometers. And it has a population of over 211 million people. The country is the largest in Latin America and the sixth most populous in the world. The official language is Portuguese. It's different of all the Latin America that speak Spanish. And the national currency is the Brazilian reais, that is currently valued at approximately 5.5 reais per US dollar. Brazilian GDP stands at $2.17 trillion, that making it one of the largest economies globally. Nowadays, the 10th economy. Regarding economic and political outlook, Brazil has demonstrated economic resilience in recent years. From 2021 to 2024, the country GDP grew consistently at rates above 3% per year, and the inflation closed at 4.8 in 2004, showing signs of stabilization. But the Central Bank of Brazil raised the benchmark interest rate to 15% in 2025, the highest since 2006, aiming to control inflation and maintaining macroeconomic stability. The employment has improved significantly with formal job creation, reaching record levels and employment rate dropping to 5.8% by June 2025. The next general elections are scheduled for October 2026, and we are living the major tax reform that has been regulated, introducing a new federal subnational tax system. The transition begins in 2026 and will complete it by 2023, 22. And Brazil also has launched its regulated carbon market in December 2024, establishing the Brazilian greenhouse gas emission trading system aligned with the global sustainability goals. And Brazil has a strong industry, manufacturing, and according to the Brazilian National Confederation of Industry, CNI, Brazil most prominent industrial sectors include food and beverage, one of the largest sectors with a strong domestic demand and export capacity, chemical and petrochemical, that includes fertilizers, plastics, and petroleum derivatives, metallurgy and steel. They produce steel, iron, aluminum, and other metals essentials for infrastructure. Automotive, it's very strong. Manufacturing of vehicles, auto parts, and agricultural machinery. Constructions, that is the major employer responsible for public and private infrastructure projects. Steels and apparel, that strong export presence, especially in the states of São Paulo, Santa Catarina, and Ceará. Machinery and equipment, capital goods, production for various industry sectors. Pulp and paper, important for export and sustainability, with a robust forestry sector. Mining, extraction of iron, bauxite, gold, and other minerals, and energy, generation and distribution, with a growing focus on renewable sources such as solar, wind, and biomass. And Brazil is an interesting country to invest because Brazil offers a compliant environment for international investors. This drives by political and economic stability, strong infrastructure, and abundant natural resources, large consumer market and growth potential, government policies and tax incentives. These factors position Brazil as a strategic destination for business, seeking expansion, diversification, and long-term partnerships in Latin America. That's it, sir.
All right, everybody. Good morning. My name is Renato Ruiz, and then I'm gonna explain you a framework of our taxations and incentives that we have here in Brazil. I listed some kind of some of the main taxes and information related to this for you guys just to understand how we figure out our issues taxes in our country, especially always when I speak or when I talk to my clients, I always say the environmental taxes in Brazil are not complex, are sophisticated because we have so many taxes and then we can organize everything with you and then with our clients and figure out these difficulties from people who lives abroad, especially because of the states, and we have some difference of our states, municipal, and so for federal taxes as well, right? So the first one here is regarding our income taxes. So the average taxes for these is 34% of combined rates. We already have like capital gains taxes, for example, is a progressive rates applying from people for no residents and comes from 15 to 22% of taxes as well. And then for withholding, we have some specific situations here, especially regarding the dividends. Dividends, so far, we don't have taxes, but in our tax reform, in our situation, people say probably in the future, they becomes with some initial taxation about this, but right now, fortunately, we don't have dividends, taxes on dividends for our country as well. For interests in general, we have 15%, and then we have like the most 50% for the royalties, patents, trademarks, formulas, and similar items that we can uh, have this kind of taxations as well. For net operating losses, we don't have time to use it. It's forever, but we can only use this when we have taxes to pay for 30% of our income taxes periods as well. So we cannot use it everything at the same year as well. For the tax incentive, we have two most important here in our country is related to the place that you are. If you go to the Amazon, we have the Sudan. That's an incentive for companies who establish their sites in there. And then if we go to the Northwest, we already have the Sudani is almost the same situation that if you put your plants in that state, you can use some incentives in your taxation as well. Next one is regarding the transfer price that we become part of the world in this kind of calculation last year. Brazil adopted the OECD application for all the calculations here. So this is good news for making business with other countries because we can talk with the same language of taxes, transfer price taxes as a whole. So this is really good for us. For VAT taxes, we have five different kinds of VAT tax. The first one is regarding to a federal VAT, is IPI. It comes from 0 to 300%. PIS and COFINS is a federal as well, comes from 1.65 to 70.6% in average. For states, VAT, we have ICMS, comes from 7 to 20%. And finally, we have a municipal services taxes that comes from 0 to 5%. That's a combine of VAT taxes in our country. And then this tax reform that Alexandre already talked to you comes to simplify these five different taxes that we have here. So they will move these five different taxes to the two simple ones that can organize our situation as well. Then we have taxes for exchange transactions and financial things, so 3.5%. And finally, green taxes regarding the adoption of a carbon market here in our country, that the company who will have emission plus than 10 billion tons of the gases needs to report to our government, and then if they are applied, they have to reduce or pay some additional taxes to keep these emission gases as well, right? Next slide is regarding our labor issues. So we have basically 80 hours per day, 44 hours per week, and then our monthly payments. We organize our payment by monthly, not by year, and then our compensation minimum wage is around $285 per month. Of course, we have some connections with our unions. We have some relationship with them, and then sometimes we need to agree with them with the specific salaries as well, right? So for payroll taxes, we have four special ones that we can highlight it here. So Social Security, 20%, contribution for third party, 60%, and FGTS is kind of a severance fund for the employees that is around 8% per month already. And then we have the employment benefits that we have to increase in our costs when we hire people here. So is some of these. So the two special case that I want to highlight you is 30 days paid vacation, and then 13th salary that they have to pay every year as well, right? In my last participation here, I want to highlight it to regulated and then financial information regarding the companies that we have. And of course, we have a good public and traded companies here, and the regulated environmental is really, really good. And then our CSC is called CVM, and then our central bank already makes some rules to companies follow during our market. We have some specific limits of revenues and total assets that the companies needs to be audited. So companies who has more than 300 million reais of revenues needs to have an auditor as a whole already. And then finally, just to conclude my presentation here, we adopted the international standards for sustainability last year. Then this becomes for our listed companies to be obligated to publish and be audited the information from sustainability information up to after 2026 as well, right? So if you have some questions or some doubts regarding our presentation, so feel free to reach out to me, and then we can keep for the next one, Sean. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Renato. I'd like to bring on Manuel, who's the managing partner of Mexico, and Miguel, who's an advisory partner and their international business leader, who will talk about doing business in Mexico.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you, every one of you of the audience, for your attention this morning. Maybe you are not aware, but we have a national holiday today. It's Mexico's Independence Day. But taking from there, we're independent, but we, as all the major global economies in the world, are interdependent. So I like to have these types of exercises, this type of forum. Thanks for my colleagues from Baker Tilly, Brazil. It's really interesting what you have been mentioning, interesting country. And well, why Mexico, Brazil, and Canada today? Well, we are standing among giants. We don't have 6 time zones like Canada, but we have 3 at least. We don't look that big. But well, interesting. Mexico and Canada have a long story together as business partners since and increasingly since the mid 90s with the first was the NAFTA and now the USMCA. And tomorrow we don't know what will be happening to that, but it seems that we are immediately very tied to the largest economy in the world, which is the US. So I just want to give you an overview of Mexico, of the country. It's highly populated country, 130 million people. As mentioned, it's 2 million square kilometers, but it is like expanded. You see, we have very different types of weather. We have rainforests, deserts, mountains, beaches. Canadians love Mexican beaches and properties among that, and we can talk about that later. And in the northwest, we have Mediterranean weather as well. We have a wine country, and with climate change, you Canadians are making way better wines every year. So going forward on this, well, what we have is the Mexican peso. We have a presidential system. Mexican peso is the currency. And we are not a parliament system. We have a presidential system. The executive power here has a lot of power, and well, Mexico has the key sectors in the economy. For sure, is manufacturing mostly, or a big piece of that is automotive, but electronics, aerospace. We do have a huge investment from Bombardier here in Mexico, as an example, and there are mining, agribusiness. We do sell a lot of food to the U.S. and to Canada as well. The fruits and the vegetables for the winter are produced here. So it's interesting. Probably quick, an interesting data is that the value of Mexican berries, all types of berries of exports surpass the value of the exports of oil. So it's interesting for the agribusiness, and now that you're part of the automotive business community, for sure there are a lot of interlinked supply chains for producing a vehicle that has many parts from Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. and it sometimes it crosses the border several times, and now that we're coping with the tariff issues, I think there will be a change in the game, but not radically because we are geographically closer. So uh, I think just for the benefit of your time of the overview, employment, it's we have a measure of the employment. We have a pretty fair uh, low unemployment rate, but we do have as well a large portion of the economy in the formal sector. So this is a big challenge for the Mexican economy. And President Sheinbaum has vowed to be the president that creates more formal jobs. Well, there have been some measures by probably putting formal employment to the gig economy. There's an ongoing pilot program for paying or for making Uber and other app workers to get social benefits. So far, it's too early to conclude something, but by the end of this year, we will be learning how it went and if it is something that's going to be to stay. So regarding taxes, we have a pretty way simpler system than other countries like Brazil. Province or state taxes are pretty consistent and not relevant. Well, we have a payroll tax, which is not higher than 3%. We have, talking about state taxes, we have a hospitality taxes and which are marginal. The large taxes, the ones that you should be carrying most as coming to Mexico for investing or for a partnering with someone here are the federal taxes, which are the Mexican income tax, which is levied at a 30% rate, and the VAT, which has a general rate of 16% with a quite complex credit system and has its own differences for border areas and exemptions or zero rate for exports. So those are the ones that are relevant. I don't know, Miguel, if you want to take it from here and follow
Yes,
up.
thank you, Manuel. Yes, thank you. And probably one important event that happened in January 2025 here in Mexico was that the president released a new plan. The name of the plan is Plan Mexico, and they try to provide easy process to invest in Mexico. That means that they are doing some incentives, specific incentives in accelerated depreciation, fixed assets immediate deduction, and in different parts of the country that there are essential for the growth. Also, one of the things that is important in Mexico related with taxes is that we are very digital in that process. We use electronic invoices, we present electronic accounting. So it's very common for the process of the tax running in platforms, running with electronic invoices, doing all the blacklist check for the deduction or not deduction of invoices. Sorry, in that platforms, in that issue. So we're working a lot in Mexico in digital transformation. One of the things is that also included in this plan Mexico is that they want to provide a web page that is a soft landing in terms of the name. The name is Ventanilla Única, is like a one-stop place to see what we need in terms of investment, what kind of companies what we can create, what kind of permits we need to develop, if we need to involve in the process of ID tax process and so on. For ID tax, we need an electronic firm and so on. So that's the things that are happening here in Mexico. And of course, in Baker Tilly, we can help you a lot in this process. Related with labor, and also Manuel was telling that also in this plan Mexico, that they are trying to increase the number of employees and the economy, and part of the labor process is quite simple. We have 8 hours per day and 40 hours, and they reduce it because we used to have 45 hours per week, and right now there are some process to reduce the hours per week. The compensation and employees' benefits are quite easy. There are vacation, there are seniority, and in some cases there are indemnities, and there are some rules that we need to take care, but we don't want to provide all that information in this moment. Also, we have unions. The process with the unions have a kind of change here in Mexico, because in the past the unions were kind of complicated issue to provide in the companies, but right now they are really trying to do a good exercise for the unions and provide services to the employees. So that's a good measure, and I think it's going to be better in the future. And the payroll taxes that we used to work here in Mexico is, of course, Social Security contributions, house severance contribution, and employee severance fund. Yes, Manuel.
Just a quick numbers to give perspective to the audience. The minimum wage in Mexico is less than $450 per month. If you add the benefits should be around 20 to 25% on top of that figure, which are the statutory benefits, including this Christmas bonus and vacations and so on. And as you're mentioning, the Mexican government has a strategy to ramp up the Mexican economies, and one linked to exports, and for sure the obvious countries where we should be starting are North America, US, Canada, and Latin America. Those are the regions that we should be embracing more to work with.
Correct. And going forward, in terms of financial reporting, of course, we have public companies that they need to present quarterly reports to the stockholders, and in terms of we have to compliance here in terms of that processes. We need to present by IFRS if you are a public company, but also we have Mexican financial reporting standards that they are quite the same of the IFRS, except fair value. Here in Mexico, we don't like so much the fair value in terms of restatement of or increase the value. We work with a lot of impairments, but in terms of reevaluate the assets is not so common. So that's probably the difference between Mexican financial reporting standards and IFRS. But they are working, and they are doing a lot of exercise to be in the same move. So I don't know, probably in the future where the Mexican financial reporting standards are going to be quite the same as IFRS. We have, for non-public companies, the obligation in terms of mercantile law and accounting is you need to present annual report, financial statements. But for tax compliance, because we have electronic accounting for tax compliance, at least we need to present a trial balance in a monthly basis to the government, and of course, the income tax payment and the VAT payment that are in a monthly basis. So that's why even if we need to present financial statements in a yearly basis, all the companies in Mexico work very tight to present and report in a monthly basis. Also, in terms of ESG, Mexico provide a new rules that are not the same as IFRS. They try to reduce the measures in terms to say they only need to present 30 indicators. Of course, in an environmental, social, and governance, but there are only 30 indicators that you need to present, you need to measure, and you need to report it in an hourly basis. If you present by IFRS, of course, you need to do all the full compliance of S2 requirements. In terms of audit requirements, of course, it's a good practice, and I can tell you that mainly the medium and big companies here in Mexico, even though they are not obligated for tax compliance, because there is a rule for tax compliance that you need to present audit, and also, of course, public companies. But there is a good practice process here in Mexico that almost the medium companies present audit financial statements, even though for bank loans and for investors and in general. So that's the in general the process. And I don't know, Manuel, if you want to share the economic and trade snapshot comparison, so we can close this session.
Yeah, just a quick one. As mentioned, we, Brazil, Canada, and Mexico are the most relevant economies in this part of the world after the US in terms of size, but pretty large sizes. And three economies have been thriving and trying to get inflation under control as a consequence of COVID. And well, it seems that economies are succeeding on this. Brazil, Mexico has a trade deficit, and well, both Canada and Brazil have a surplus. So it for me, it's not relevant, not as relevant as some politicians mention, but I think that it's part of what how we are integrated as part of the global economy. I think though the three economies are relevant, and talking about people who are in the audience today, those are the countries that we need to unite, and we need to discuss more on how to collaborate in terms of trade, investment, and making alliances for this new geopolitical reality in terms of how trade barriers are surging again, and putting to test, challenging the way we do business together. So probably I think we should go for the Q&A piece, so we can have this healthy conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Manuel. Thank you, Miguel. Let's bring Renato and Alexander back on the screen, and we'll do a couple of questions and talk through that. Hide this so we can see faces a little bit better. So, given the impact of the U.S. government's current actions or inactions, as it seems can be some days, can you talk to us a little bit about the main impact that it's having on your businesses and your clients? Is the uncertainty worse than the certainty? And please, it's open forum, so whoever wants to jump in.
Alexandre, Renato, you have something?
Okay. The current U.S. administration under President Trump has introduced a series of protectionist and political assertive measures that directly impact Brazil's economy and business environment. The first one is trade tariffs and economic uncertainty. The U.S. has imposed significant tariffs to Brazilian imports, including 50% duty on key products. These measures increases transactions costs and global uncertainty, potentially dampening Brazil export performance at GDP growth. However, Brazil is a relatively close economy, and domestic stimulus policies have helped to cushion some of the negative effects. The diplomatic institutional tensions are high. The U.S. has sanctioned Brazilian Supreme Court, the Minister Alexandre de Moraes, accusing him of undermining democratic principles. And this move has strained the diplomatic relations and raised concerns about interference in Brazil's internal affairs. But trade tensions between US and China maybe benefit Brazil, and there is appearing some opportunities in agribusiness and trade diversification. Mainly in commodities like soybeans, that China is looking for alternative suppliers. However, this also increases Brazil's dependence on China, which pose long-term risks. And despite the tensions, organizations like Brazil USA Business Council are working to maintain dialogue and cooperation in areas such as energy, digital trade, and critical minerals. These efforts are to preserve strategic business opportunities and bilateral engagement. I believe are the main impacts for Brazil. Here in Baker Tilly, we have a client that provide the fruits to United States, and this is the main client that has been impacted, and they are waiting for the next steps to adjust the structure, but they are looking for another markets, for example, Europe, but it's not too easy to change. Most of Brazilians are a little worried about it, but we are optimistic that as the Brazilian economy is closed, we believe that part of substantial impact of it will be absorbed by the internal market that is very large.
Yeah. Thanks, Alexandre. My take about Mexico is that for sure all the tariff announcements created a wait and see process, at least for many companies, for many projects. So far this year, there are in our clientele, mostly in automotive, there have been a pause in new projects because everyone wants to see how this will be developing and how this will be terminated. I think these doubts will be dissipating once three countries get in a table and have the renegotiation of the USMCA. It looks like there will be, it is scheduled to be renegotiated by 2026, but there are many indications that this is going to be negotiated earlier, probably by the end of this year. Having said that, even though that the major projects are stopped and that there are not super large investments announcements, what we have been seeing is a continuity on the already approved projects, no cancellations. In the case of automotive, we see that the already scheduled projects are going on. And there have not been dramatic changes in Mexican tax policy, but we have seen something relevant in terms of trade policy. President Sheinbaum announced it last week, tariffs to China ranging from 50% to cars and parts and other large and other components such as electronics and other products. So we already seeing developing this type of situation. Mexico used to be a large exporter of commodities back in the 70s and 80s, mostly oil, but that's no longer the case. Mexico's big in manufacturing and that manufacturing and probably a portion of, as mentioned, agribusiness. But well, those have been the consequences so far in the business environment.
Yes, and Manuel, probably what I see in my clients, sorry, in terms of advisory, in terms of these new tariffs that are impacting the cost and the main materials, they are requesting in terms of supply chain and in terms of analysis, how we can reduce the impact to the customers in terms of these tariffs. It means that what we are going to see here in Mexico is, of course, a national production, the process of nearing and shoring that probably is starting in a slow mode, but with these new tariffs are going to be accelerated. But also the customization of the processes. We need to see, and a lot of clients, we're talking with a lot of clients that do a lot of manufacturing, how they can improve in terms of the cost, how they can improve in terms to be more efficient in terms of the supply chain, in terms of the analysis of what can they do in terms to reduce or take the best way to provide the products in terms to take that effect in their own change. But also in that terms, what we are seeing is that they are moving a lot of industries, a lot of verticals in terms of, take control or be more productive or take the cost of these tariffs and take more market. So what we are seeing is that this end of this year is the market is going to be very proactive in terms to take some strategic decisions. So that's something that we're seeing.
And Miguel Manuel, we have one question from Raul, and his question is, for Mexico, do you feel that there could be an impact or significant impact on new investment? I guess I would assume that's foreign investment due to the potential 2026 economic package you discussed?
Well, I think it would be a positive one. There were expectations about an increase in taxes, talking about income tax for individuals and companies, but this economic package shows it's my opinion, shows that the government is committed to at least not bother or put more pressure into companies and individuals to finance the Mexican economy. I think that what the main Mexico is no longer, as mentioned, oil producer, oil exporter. This is leaving the Mexican government with just one single source of revenue, which is tax revenue, and tax revenue only could be increased by increasing the GDP. So you shouldn't mess with that if you want to get to have a healthy tax revenue, to keep on with the social programs that the government has. You cannot fund it anymore with money printing or with debt. We have a significant debt ceiling right now. So my take is that the economic package it's fair for businesses. we at least it's a good start, but I think investors are looking for more clarity in terms of of the rule of law, and in terms of stimulus for long projects, for big projects, sorry, like investment in infrastructure or a power generation. So, and those investments, which are significant, require a lot of a respect of the rule of law and stability.
Fantastic. We have about 5 minutes left for this panel and Q&A portion for this piece. One thing that was interesting to me, and I think interesting to a lot of the potential investors, what is the easiest path to foreign direct investment in your markets? Would it be easier to go down and set up shop and buy a building, buy the materials, buy the machinery? Is it easier to invest in an existing company where you're partnering with a local business that's already established? Is it easier to go and just purchase outright? Can you even purchase outright a business in your country? Because I know there are some limitations in Latin America that at least 1% must be owned by somebody in that jurisdiction. Can you speak to that? How, if you're looking to enter the market, and it's the make versus buy discussion. What works best, or what have you found works best for your clients?
Well, maybe we can talk quick about Mexico. There's not a one size fits for all, because it depends on the sector. Most of the sectors are pretty free to be to receive 100% foreign investment, of 100% Canadian investment. But there are some others which are quite more regulated, such as uh, public transportation or freight,
Hospitals.
or hospitals, power generation, so on. But there are not that many. Most of them are easier. And you need it depends on your strategy. If you can purchase a company, you can just you need to follow up a due diligence process to do that rightly, or you can start from scratch, but it can take longer if you don't have a partner. So it depends. Sorry, it's the consultant's easiest answer, but for sure, I think the one rule that I would be recommending is to find the right advisor. It can be for sure Baker Tilly, but if you trust someone here, having the right partner prevents a lot of pain and a lot of risks. So I think that would be my recommendation.
Yes, Manuela. Probably in general, in terms of merchant acquisitions and the due diligence, it relates in terms of the time and the strategic way that you get inside Mexico. For example, if you say, well, the market where I'm gonna be is quite complicated, or we are seeing that it's quite complicated, so we need a partner in Mexico, and we need some permits already that it's gonna take so many time in place and already function, and we need some leverage in the process. Absolutely, you need to think about doing a merchant acquisition process, to even doing a joint venture or buy a company. And in terms of international investment, you can buy 100% your company, and there's no issue there. You don't need to have some national participation here in Mexico. And in terms of some process, when you say, well, that's a traditional process, I don't have any issues in terms of time. I need to get inside Mexico in certain period with no rush and no as complicated strategic in terms of markets or be arranged in the national aspect. Probably the best way is to create your own company, zero risk in terms of the past of the company, and you can start scratch from zero. So that's probably the big drivers to think about how you can arrive here in Mexico.
And I think that from Brazil, hello everyone, good morning. It's quite the same here in Brazil. So it's quite flexible. It's possible to invest 100% in a company here in Brazil. So a Canadian company can participate in any kind of companies here in Brazil. Of course, there are some sectors that must be approved by the authorities, some like in health sector, in financial and insurance. But in general, we are very allowed and very open to receive foreign investors here in Brazil. We do not have controls to remunerate the shareholders. So in any moment, the cash as dividends or capital repatriation can be through a wire transfer for the Canadian shareholders. It's not necessary to have an approval from the authorities, from the Brazilian Central Bank or any kind of authority. So the cash flow is quite easy and fast. In 3 days, you can send out the cash. So it's not necessary to have any kind of national shareholder to invest here in Brazil. So we can say that, of course, that there are some, depends on the activities of the Brazilian company. It's more time consuming to have the licenses. But just to give you an example, if it's a service company, we can have a company incorporated here in Brazil in 30 days because services is not full regulated. It's quite easy to incorporate a services company. But if it's a company that will have some kind of environmental license that is more regulated, it's more time consuming to obtain the licenses. But it's something that it's in our radar here. It's something that is very regulated and it's smooth.
Thank you so much. This is a great segue to the next portion of the discussion. Graciela, nice to have you on the screen. I'll also add Pamela from Mexico, Manuel, Renato, Miguel, Alexander, thank you so much for your contributions. We'll have you back at the final Q&A. Is there anything, Darla, did you have any questions on the current? Oh, and Laura will be joining too, perfect. Darla, any questions on your end? Anything before we jump into the next portion?
Yeah, I don't actually. Sean, you pretty much asked it at the end there. It was, okay, how easy is it to do business in there? Because we do have manufacturers that are ready. I'll open up shop. I will build in your country. We will make it work. But it's that uneasy of, well, you're similar to Canada, but not exactly similar. So I think this session was phenomenal. And yeah, you guys answered everything I think our members would want to know. The political landscape is a little scary. I know with poor Brazil and what's happening there and whatnot. So, but appreciate the advice and the time, everybody. I encourage guests on the line.
We've got another set here too, where they'll talk about the practical portion
Oh,
of
okay.
this too. So we're not
we're
sending
finished.
everyone away now. Don't say goodbye quite yet. We've got Pamela from Mexico, Laurel from Mexico, and Graciela from Brazil, and they're going to talk through their practices are focused on getting you into Brazil, creating that soft landing for you in Brazil and Mexico, and really what it is practically to start your business, run your business, and begin to operate in these jurisdictions. I've got a presentation from the Brazilian side that I'll bring up, and we'll let Graciela speak to that. Pamela, you'll speak to the Mexican piece, obviously with Lauro as support from a tax perspective. Lauro is the lead tax partner in Mexico, international tax partner, and we'll then go to a second round of there'll be more time for Q&A. We'll ask a few more questions, and then Darla, you can come back and wrap it up. And take it away, Graciela.
Okay, thank you. So here I brought like a timeline to incorporate a company here in Brazil, because here in Brazil, in general, it's not possible to make business without having a legal presence here in Brazil, because you have the permanent establishment risks. So in general, when you start a business here in Brazil, you needed to set up a company. So we had two kind of forms here. It's a limited liability company and corporations. And it's most useful to go through the limited liability company because it's easier. It's not necessary to publish the financial statements. It's not necessary to publish the corporate documents. So we can advise our clients in a greenfield to start with a limited liability company. So as a first step, is necessary to after you decide the type that is limited liability company. It's necessary to have how you fund your activity. If you fund by debt or equity. And as Renat said in the beginning, depends on the tax implications derived from the debt and from the equity. You need to choose which one is the best for your business, because all of them, there are different tax implications. So, and after that, it's necessary to define who will be the shareholder. And here in Brazil, it's possible to have one shareholder, as I told after, that this shareholder can be the Canadian one, but the Canadian company must be represented by a Brazilian resident through a power of attorney, that any kind of Brazilian citizen can be this Brazilian this grantee of the Canadian company. And also it's necessary to have some documents from the Canadian, some like the power of attorney and the bylaws proving that the Canadian company exists in Canada. And all of these documents must be apostille. And so this is the first step to have a company here in Brazil. And after that, we need to analyze the licenses implications. What activities this company will perform here in Brazil? So we need to map all if licenses are required or not, because depending on that, this could be time consuming. So if it's a services company, this is quite easy to have the company incorporated here in Brazil. As I told you before, it's around 30 days to have a services company here in Brazil. And if you go to like a company that will import goods, for instance, it's necessary to have, for instance, a license to import. So this license to import must take some time to obtain it. That can be after 90 days after the company is incorporated, after the company has its taxpayer number. So after that, we needed to have the bank account open here in Brazil. After the company has its federal tax ID, it's necessary to open a bank account here in Brazil, that which the company will receive all the funds and will transfer all the funds, considering this Brazilian bank account that is required to have it here in Brazil. All the cash flows, inbound and outbound, must be registered with the Brazilian Central Bank by electronic system. It's not complicated. It's just a formality to be taken. And all these inflows, inbound or outbound, must be supported by exchange transaction through this official bank. So because our currency is Brazilian reais, and all the remittances must be made considering this currency. So the exchange conversion must be formalized by official bank here in Brazil. This is something that's not time consuming. And as I told you before, it's not necessary to have any kind of approval of any kind of authority here in Brazil. Everything is done automatically. And so basically, this is the timeline to have a company here in Brazil. And also, it's also possible that a Canadian company buy real estate here in Brazil directly. The only prohibition is to acquire rural real estates. But if the real estate is not considered a rural one in the countryside, it's possible that Canadian companies also acquire these real estates. And also, we have a tax treaty, Brazil-Canada, that it's in place, that it's a tax treaty to avoid double taxation, that it's very used. So any kind of taxes that it's imposed in a cross-border in importation of services, the Canada can take the credit, and vice versa also applies. This is something that's very, very, very good too for the business. So basically, this was I would like to share with you.
Thank you so much. And we have a similar slide from Pamela and Lauro to speak to incorporating in Mexico.
Okay, so hi everybody, nice to meet you. Actually, I was gonna say Graciela probably said everything for Mexico because it works very similar. The only difference here is that in Mexico, we do require 2 shareholders to incorporate an entity. However, the funny part is that it can be 0.01% the second shareholder, right? So a lot of companies even laugh about it because they go, so literally, he doesn't even have shares in the company. I say, yeah, literally, he hasn't. But in Mexico, we do require 2 shareholders. The reality is that here in Mexico, depending on the type of business that you're going to incorporate, you might require to have a Mexican shareholder. But as Manuel mentioned in his previous speech, not all shareholders need to be Mexican, depending on the type of business that you're in, right? And what is going to be the purpose and nature of your business. One of the biggest challenges that we've seen for incorporation in Mexico, and I think for us, is actually getting the UBO information from foreign investors, right? Because a lot of the times, at least in Mexico, right, giving your information is very straightforward. Your tax ID, like it's something that normally it's not very reserved. But when we talk to foreign investments, a lot of the times is, oh, why are you asking my wife's name or my kids' names or my certificate of marriage, right? So these are informations that for the UBO process or the incorporation of the entity have been a hurdle for a lot of the companies, right? So the idea or the goal that Laura and I have worked with most of our clients is how to make you guys feel more comfortable with all of these processes that are required in Mexico. A lot of them are processes set up for money laundering purposes and kind of assisting with that phantom companies that sometimes get created. So they might look a little bit daunting at first, but then when you go through the process, the idea is that we make it easier for you. So normally an incorporation process in Mexico can look roughly around 2 months, including the tax setup, right? One of our biggest challenges, or the 2 biggest challenges that we're seeing from a setup perspective here in Mexico, is the very famous fiscal domicile, right? Previously in Mexico, fiscal domiciles could be set up at law firms or at accounting firms like Baker Tilly. However, nowadays that setup is getting a little bit more limited. The authorities are questioning in Mexico, why is your setup not in where your line of business is? However, in Baker Tilly, we have found a way to assist with this process. And for the incorporation process, Baker Tilly is now currently being able to assist with that. However, one of the biggest things is that previously a service contract could work as a fiscal domicile proof, but now we would need to get a landline to be able to incorporate an entity, right? So these are small little things that even though the government was trying to make difficult, here at Baker Tilly we have assisted in making them easy and not causing any delays in the process of incorporation, right? One of the other points, and a very important point here, is that in Mexico, there's 3 types of entities that we can set up. Well, there's obviously more, but initially the 3 more common ones is that we can set up the entity as a branch, right? A subsidiary from the Canadian entity, or we can incorporate the entity as a limited liability entity or as a non-limited liability entity, right? Normally, 99% of our clients are constituted as a limited liability entity, which is the setup that we as Baker Tilly recommend for foreign investment. Allows you to have that separation and segregation between the Canadian entity and the Mexican entity. Normally, in the incorporation process or initially in the setup here in Mexico, one of the biggest challenges that we have is that we need to comply with electronic bookkeeping and electronic accounting, right? These are two very important tax compliances that we need to cover here in Mexico, and that is from day one of the incorporation of the entity, no matter if the entity does or does not have operations. So a lot of the times for foreign entities goes, oh, there's no operation, so probably I don't need to do any compliance. In Mexico, it's a bit different. Compliance starts from day one. From the moment the company is legally incorporated, that's from when the tax compliance needs to come about. Now, why Mexico and what are the benefits of actually incorporating? I believe that there is two models that we've seen a lot, especially for international companies. If you're a service entity, a lot of the times Mexico becomes your Mexican hub to assist your Canadian companies, even your US companies or your European companies. The two reasons why we've seen that this has worked is because of the time difference and the time zones. A lot of the times these hubs used to be in India or in Asia, but the time difference has become a challenge to have your service center foreignly and outside of the America region, right? So Mexico has become a very big hub, and especially for service entities that want to have their process set up in Mexico, right? To just attend their American market, right? They don't even have clients in Mexico. This is what we call, and I'll let Laura explain that a bit more after I finish, but this is what we call a cost plus structure, right? A structure where you're working in Mexico, but technically you just work for the US or Canadian or even European entity, right, of your business. The second model that we have a lot in Mexico is importation companies, where their only model is I import from other regions and I sell directly into the Mexican market. So my model is very simple. My model of work is very simple. I have a 3PL company that assists me with the movement of the products. I have a warehouse and a custom agent. And so as a company, what I procure is I procure the importation licenses that I need. And depending on the business, I might need some permits, some specific permits, if it's food or other type of businesses. And so obviously, my model is very simple, right? And then my third model, and the third model that we've seen is now, yes, I want to open a manufacturing company in Mexico. You know what? I want to move it from Asia. I want to move it from other countries. So we've seen a lot companies saying, you know what? I want to move my manufacturing company into Mexico because it's closer for the movement of the product to arrive to Canada, to arrive to the US, even to go to Latin America, right? Mexico is a very good middle point between all of these countries for this product. And so, yeah, this is really a little bit of the model. I'll let now Laura explain a little bit more the tax implications of these type of models. But in general terms, this is how the model works. And normally, the idea for Baker Tilly is that we assist with the whole compliance that you're going to need for the first 5 years. We kind of know already what you're going to need, so we anticipate your need before you even ask for it. But I'll let Laura explain a little bit of the compliance piece from a tax perspective.
Thank you, Pam, and good morning, everyone. Well, tax compliance is pretty much the same for all the companies. We have monthly tax return, we have annual tax return, we have some informative returns. But I think I would like to talk about, that you said, the characterization of the companies, because that's important. I mean, how I'm going to set up my company, which functions that this company will have, fixed assets, risks, because all that combined will have the portion of the profit. I mean, if we set up, as an example, a trading company with a limited risk, for sure the profit or the margin will be small. Okay, but if we have all the risk of accounting, receivables, if we have a fixed asset, if we have employees, of course, we have a full-fledged company, so we will have bigger margin. Okay. It's important also to say that in Mexico we have a special regime for importers and exporters, which is a temporary regime. Okay, that is important because you can avoid the VAT at the customs. Okay, of course you can get a VAT certification from the tax authorities, but it is important to say that because you can import to Mexico to transform, and then you can send it back to Canada with no VAT charge. It's important. Okay, I think that's it. Sean.
So yeah, I think just to add, just as a final point, if you do decide to think about what what opening in Mexico would look like, the only thing that I would say is that normally from an administrative perspective here at Baker Tilly, we can assist you with almost 90% of that model, right? And in operating that model. So what we always say is it makes it simpler for you to operate your business, right? Because you will focus on the things that you know how to do best, right? Which is setting up the manufacturing company, understanding and selling to your partners or to your distributors. And a lot of the times, one thing that I would like to add is that we've seen a lot of companies say, you know what, I'm going to hire a person in Mexico, see if the business model works, and then I incorporate the entity. We've seen that model not be very efficient for most companies. So what I would recommend is that if you are thinking of understanding if your company will be successful in Mexico, it's simpler to contact your specialist so that we can help you analyze that first before you go into that route of I hire somebody, I work with them for 2 to 3 to 5 months, and then I transfer them to the company that I'm going to incorporate. The reason being is that that transfer of the employees makes that distribution process a little bit more complex. So definitely my advice would be before even going into that route, just let us analyze the business with you and see how the model will work in Mexico. So, but yeah, that will be really everything.
Perfect. I'll bring Graciela back on the screen as well. And we can just go through a couple Q&A questions. I'm not on the screen either. There we go. So if I'm a business owner and I'm going to need to spend meaningful time in Mexico or Brazil, as I start up my operations, as I'm doing due diligence, as I'm looking to expand in different areas, are there any considerations from a visa perspective, an employment law perspective that I need to think about if I'm spending 90 days or 120 days in either of these jurisdictions? Am I going to need to get a visa beforehand? Am I going to be subject to any tax laws in your specific jurisdictions? Or am I free to come and go until we're actually doing a lot of work in the country?
Well, from Brazilian perspective, if we, for a tax point of view, if you stay here more than 6 months, doesn't matter the visa that you have, you are considered a tax resident for Brazil. So it's necessary to avoid to stay here in Brazil if you do not want to be a tax resident here in Brazil more than 6 months. This is for a tax perspective. Any kind of visa, more than 6 months, you become Brazilian tax resident. But for a labor point of view, if you act as an officer of a Brazilian company, for instance, you need a permanent visa. So we cannot be like a director or be a member of the board of directors here of a Brazilian company without having a permanent visa. And also for labor, if you act any kind of labor activities here in Brazil, that you'll be registered under a Brazilian company as an employee, it's necessary to have a labor visa too. So, and of course, if you make business like a visit and make a business for a short period of time, it's necessary to have a visitor visa. That it's a quite easy to obtain, but you cannot stay longer than 6 months here in Brazil in a period of 12 months.
Perfect.
Well, in case of Mexico, it's pretty much the same than Graciela told us, Sean. If you spend in Mexico more than 183 days, which is 6 months, you will be considered as a tax resident. But it's important to say that if you establish your home in Mexico, it doesn't matter the 6 months. If you establish your home today in Mexico, you will be considered as a tax resident since today. Okay, but if you are working here for less than 6 months, don't worry about it. If it's more than 6 months, you will be considered as a tax resident. As an employee, is the same. You need a labor visa to work here. Okay, and if you spend more than 6 months and the employer is out of Mexico, so the individual will be the responsible for pay the taxes here in Mexico. Okay, that's important.
Fantastic. Really appreciate your time today, the insight, and the understanding that although it is a process to set up the company, that the administration is well in hand with Baker Tilly, and understanding that that soft landing is possible. Because I think from our perspective, it's the unknown as a Canadian coming into Mexico, coming into Brazil, coming into anywhere in Latin America. Generally, we are it's the unknown, and it's great to know that we have partners that can support us in that manner. I mean, I was recently in Mexico City meeting with Miguel, Manuel, Pamela, and their team. I look for and Laurel, pardon me, Laurel was also there. Look forward to. I've got meetings with Renato in I believe next week in another place, but it's really impressive to go and visit these places, to spend time, a little bit of time there, meet the people, meet our people there, especially. They really do. You get a different appreciation for the robust economies, the true professionals that are in these jurisdictions. And Darla, I will let you wrap it up. Absolutely.
Am I on? Yeah. So actually, I've got a question.
Right.
Well, kind of two questions. One is the language. So if I open up a business in Brazil, is the English language, not that we would expect absolutely everybody to speak English, but is there a higher percentage of those that speak English? So yes, that's kind of my first question. And the second kind of part of that is we, of course, if we open up shop within your countries, want to hire locals, right? To hire people of the country. In each of your countries, is it acceptable to bring workers from Canada, whether it's just specialized individuals? So you may go down, start up a business, bring 5 of your own laborers with you to help set up shop, and then being able to hire locally for the rest of the roles. are your countries friendly to that? Is there any rules or regulations that state actually you can't bring anybody from Canada, you have to hire all local, or any discrepancies in there? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Darla, for your questions. So for Brazil, the language official is Portuguese. All kind of documents and financial statements, contracts, agreements, legal must be produced in Portuguese. Any kind of documents that produce in English must be sworn translated and registered with Notary Public Office. And so it's not common here in Brazil because Brazil is big as a continent. And so I'm in São Paulo city, that's a business city. So it's quite common that the legal law firms, but the top ones have some professionals that speak English fluently, but it's not quite common. If you go to the streets or if you go to the public authorities, they do not speak any word in English. And so it's something that it's not so common and easy to find people that's fluent in English. So I don't know if this was your questions. And the second question, here in Brazil, we are very friendly with foreigners. We love foreigners, people. And we are very friendly with the people. Some like in Canada, because I lived in Canada for 1 year. So in Toronto, so it's amazing. Canada lives here in my heart. But we are very friendly. But in a legally speaking, we are allowed to have foreigner employees limited to 130. So 230 of the employees of a Brazilian company must be Brazilian ones, and 130 can be foreigners one, but there is this limitation.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Welcome.
For Mexico, it kind of works actually, I would say the same as Graciela mentioned. Here in Mexico, we're a very bilingual country. In general terms, it will be very simple to operate with English speaking as our second language. Obviously, there's some areas where it's complicated to find English, like workers most probably won't speak English, factory workers, stuff like that. But in general terms, the more administrative director positions and all that are very simple to find dual speaking citizens. And as well, we are really friendly to foreigners, especially Canadians. So I think that shouldn't be a problem. However, we have the same rule as Rasilia mentioned. There is a percentage, and I think it's also 2/3, correct, Lauro? Need to be Mexican, and then I think 1/3 needs to be foreign, correct?
Yeah, well, we have a restriction in the employee law, but actually it's just in the law because usually we have foreign employees from everywhere, and you just need to explain why of the specialization of the foreign people, and that's it. It's not an issue in Mexico to hire foreign employees.
And actually, most of the companies that incorporate Darla here in Mexico bring in initially the director positions or
Right.
those bigger positions. They bring them foreignly, especially when they're incorporating, because obviously they want to like show the lay of the land. For example, Indian companies, very common. Immediately, the first day they open, they bring their foreign person. So it also depends on your line of business, the know-how that you need to bring into the country, right? The expertise they need to come from outside. So yeah, that's how really the model works.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, if we have no other questions from the audience.
Yeah, it looks like that's all the Q&A, Darla. So we'll let you
Okay, excellent.
wrap it up.
I don't have much to say other than that was fantastic. Way more positive. Not that I didn't think it was going to be positive, but we all seem to feel this negative cloud that's been hanging around with us since about January of this year. So to me, I felt this session was very positive. scary, we all know, to try to expand and do things that are what we're not used to, or change. And manufacturing, we're not the best people to make change quickly. So being able to rely on our partners such as yourselves to kind of guide us through even just relief of, hey, you know what, let's keep talking about that idea in Mexico, let's keep looking at South America as an option. um, Thank you so much to all of our presenters today, and putting together the information and sharing with us. We have lots of countries looking to partner and collaborate, which, again, I love the words that everybody used because we're all in this together. I think all of our countries, other than maybe one country, feels that we are a collaborative group. And I just wanted to say how wonderful it is to hear that Mexico and Brazil are still moving forward, that see this as an opportunity, not so much as a challenge. And honestly, I think we're all going to be much better in the end. Thank you, Baker Tilly. I can't say enough appreciating your time and effort, especially being in different countries and time zones at the moment. Thank you so much. To our guests next week, please join us. We are back again Monday morning. I don't have my sheet in front of me, but I believe we've got another couple of countries we're looking at. But yes, you'll see the marketing come out. Thanks so much, everybody.